I hope I'm pronouncing this right. There was a gentleman named Euripides, I think his name was. He was a playwright in ancient Athens. And there's a translation of something that he said in one of his plays. It was a play where there was this elder who was speaking to a young person and giving them some advice. And according to Euripides, it went something like this. Forgive, child, because people are people. I've been thinking this week about what it is to be a human being. And we get up every day. And we take a shower and we get dressed and we feed the cat and we share our home with someone and we have a job and we have people depending upon us. And we have our transportation and we have to pay our bills. And we get caught up in doing these things. And we go about our life, and most of that is centered on the idea for a large part of needs. Needs to keep the lights on, needs to keep four walls around us. The need that we have to love and to be loved. The need to care for those in our lives. The need to have some sort of purpose. The need to bring in some monetary energy into our homes. And so we get up and we begin these conversations. We have a conversation about breakfast and we have a conversation on your way to work. Could you drop, Susie off at school? And by the way, today when you get off work, can you pick her up again and take her to her piano lessons because I've got to take Mary to her soccer practice, and could you get a loaf of bread and could you pick up some milk? And by the way, the cat hasn't been feeling good, so pick up that medication the vet told us to get and see if you can force the cat to take it down and all that sort of thing. And we sort of live our lives that way. And we have these connections and we have these aspirations in terms of we want to do well at our job, maybe we want to advance, maybe we want to make some more money, maybe we want to move to a better neighborhood, or to get a better piece of transportation, or to buy a flat screen TV, or whatever it is. And that's kind of where we are in terms of being a human being, moment to moment, day to day. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are a young Roman soldier. And that may be difficult to do, but just try and get into that place. So you get up in the morning and you take your shower and you put on your Roman soldier clothes. And you have your wife or you have the person that you share your home with, and it's the same type of thing. Making sure you feed the cat, and will you take her to school? And after work today, can you pick her up? And can you get the loaf of bread? And can you get the milk? And by the way, Friday's payday, so we have to run to Costco and we have to pick things up. Because there's a party this Saturday, and by the way, don't forget that you have a lodge meeting tonight, and it's really important you get there. So you get up and you do those things, and you drop her off for school, and you come into work, wherever that is. And so you come in, and you are maybe you're a corporal, or a low-level sergeant, or whatever. You're trying to work your way up through the ranks. You're trying to do a good job. You're trying to please the people around you. So you come in, and the captain is there. He's your boss, and you say, okay, what are we doing today? Oh, well, we got this crucifixion thing today. There's this guy named Jesus. We need to crucify him, and here's the paperwork. And so anyway, if you can get your team together and assemble over there, and then you guys will deal with that. Well, how long do you think this will take? Because after I've got to pick up my daughter at school when it's over with, and I have to get the loaf of bread, and I have to get the milk. Oh, it should be over by then. It's no really big deal. We've done a whole bunch of these. And so you enter into that. You're just a regular person. And suddenly, in the midst of this, you find out that there's something bigger going on here. You find out that you're part of something that's social and religious and cultural. And suddenly this whole situation you've gotten into at work turns out to be this big thing and there's crowds, and there's yelling, and there's deep feelings, and emotions are running high. You find yourself in this place. You know, you got your cat, you got your wife, you got your daughter, you got your transportation, you got your PG&E bill, you got to go to Costco this weekend, but right now you're right here. You're in this situation. And you look around and you find that there is this confusion within you. Confusion in terms of who and what you really are. Because this event has taken you to that place, because we are more than just the trip to Costco and paying the bills and feeding the cat and taking the shower. There's a place in us that questions meaning. There's a place in us that is looking for moral and ethical ideas. There's a place for us of discerning. There's a place for us where we look for meaning, where we look for metaphor. There's a place for us that we begin to question who and what we are. This is the place where philosophers have been forever. This is the place of mystics. This is the place of religion. And suddenly we find ourselves in that place, and we are in this place of confusion. And it takes the meaning of our day to a completely different place. And this person that you're dealing with as a professional, because after all, that's what you are, that's your job. He looks down at you and makes eye contact with you as you're, trying to do your thing, as you're trying to do your job. He makes eye contact with you. And he says, "Father or parent, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So as a metaphysician, I look at this story and I think, what does this mean? Parent, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In our philosophy, there's this idea that we as human beings, I read something this morning. I started off the day with a reading from Ernest Holmes that talked about freedom. So if I go back to what I talked about last week we talked about the fact that there was once upon a time this big bang in the universe, and the universe exploded onto the scene, and we were there for that, and there was this incredible power, and we say in metaphysics that we can use this power for whatever it is that we truly want to use it for. And so the other piece of that, according to what we believe in metaphysics, is that with power comes freedom. How shall I use this freedom? The guy on the cross used the freedom, and the guy putting him on the cross is using the freedom. In both those places. And so the confusion that we come into, and that place within us, that higher place, is where we almost take a step back. It's like this out-of-body experience. We step back and say, whoa, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm doing? And see, the amazing thing about Jesus is not just a mystic, but Jesus is kind of like a psychologist or a sociologist. And what he knows is that this soldier, you, me, this soldier who's down there, that next week, next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, whenever it is, there's going to be a day where he sits with this in him and says, oh my God, what did I do? How could I have been part of that? And see, the metaphorical meaning, the universality of this story is this, is that each and every one of us, in living this life, in being this thing called a human being, we all have those things. That decade, the 20s, the 30s, or that marriage, or that job, or that place we lived, or that divorce, or that abandonment, or that time we really embarrassed ourselves. We've all got them. We've all been involved in those things. And at some point, tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years, whenever it is, we sit in that place and we go, oh my God, what is it that I did? What did I do? I can't believe I did that. And Jesus, in his wisdom, being a mystic, and this is what all the great mystics, and I'm not putting Jesus on any pedestal above any other mystic, but what the mystics know is that there is a higher place in us to stand into forgiveness. You know, we've all heard forgive and forget. And I don't know about you, but my experience in this world, in this lifetime, in the decades I've been around, I'm not sure if I really buy that. Forgive and forget. I think it's about, I'm not sure if it's about forgive and forget. I think it's if we look at the word forgive, and in there is that word give. And I think the question I have is there something to be given in this? And the other side of give is to receive. Is there something to be received in this? Now we know, if we look historically at the Christian narrative, which is where this story comes from, the Judeo-Christian narrative, we know that without the crucifixion, the Jesus narrative wouldn't be such a great story. I mean, it really needs the crucifixion to bring it home. You know what I'm saying? It needs that part. And so for 2,000 years, this story has lived. This story has had importance. And so, is it possible that we would have this story today if it weren't for that Roman soldier? And so, basically what Jesus is saying to them is that he's speaking to a higher place. He said that higher place basically, is a place of forgiveness, a place of understanding, a place of asking ourselves the question, what is it that I have to receive out of this? And it takes us to a place, in other words, if I believe this way, then I have to believe in the idea that if you ask me what the purpose of life is as a metaphysician, is I say the purpose of life is evolution, the purpose of life is growing, the purpose of life is moving forward. It's not about getting stuff. God is not a vending machine. The universe is not a vending machine. It's about understanding. It's about gaining a greater and deeper and richer idea of our capacities. The capacities of love, the capacity of healing, the capacity of the meaning of things. So what do I mean by this? About a year and a half ago, I was down in Houston, and I was spending some time with my daughter, who is a young mother. And one of those crucifixion moments for me that lives in my heart is when I made the decision to break up my family in a divorce. And I know that a lot of us in this room have experienced that same thing. And it was hard for me to see what my children went through. And there are certain images. And the reason I can identify with the Roman soldier is there are certain images, there are certain looks that I have three children, and there are certain looks that each of the three gave me at different times during the course of when all that was going on that I will never forget. They are like branded into my memory. And one of them is a photograph, and when I went to visit my oldest son some years ago, he had some photos, and we were kind of going through them, and I saw a photo, and there was a look on his face. It was one of those snapshots where it wasn't being posed for, and that look on his face took me right back to that. That the depth of what was going on. So, a year and a half ago, I'm sitting with my daughter. We had taken my two grandchildren to this park. They were playing, and we had kind of played with them for a while, and then we got kind of worn out, so we go sit down and let them run around. We're sitting on a bench, and my daughter and I are on this bench, and next to us is a gorilla. And the gorilla on the bench is the past. And are we going to talk about the gorilla or are we not? So we start talking. And I asked my daughter, I said, what's it been like for you to be a parent? And she said, wow, she goes, I just cannot believe the responsibility. She goes, I think about everything. I think about everything I do. And I'm so aware of the mistakes I made. I make. The minute I make them, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I let them eat the wrong thing. I let them stay up too late. I got them up too early. I let them watch this movie. I overindulged them. I underindulged them. Whatever. And she went through this thing of being a parent. And I said, no one gives us a manual in terms of being a parent. It's just we give it our best shot. So the gorilla is starting to perk up his ears because we're talking about family, right? We're talking about what it is to be a parent, what it is to be a child. So I asked her, I said, what do you find is really important to you about being a parent? I'm starting to ease my way into the gorilla just a little bit. And she said, well, what's really important to me is to make sure that the kids feel really safe and to make sure that they feel loved and to make sure that they can go to bed at night and not have to worry about things. Well, we're getting right into the gorilla, aren't we? So I decided to just go right into the gorilla, and I said, why do you think that that's so important to you? She said, why do you think? I said, we talk about mistakes we make as parents, and I said, I know that the home you came out of is something I think about all the time. And she said, it's interesting because her husband, his family stayed intact. And she said, it's interesting, her husband's name is George, and she said, George and I have these conversations sometimes, and he doesn't really understand why it's so important for me to do certain things. And I tell him, well, George, you don't know what it's like. And I want to make sure that our kids don't experience that. And I said, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. And she said, well, Dad, she goes, the thing is, I think it makes me a better parent. So what's the meaning of life? The meaning of life, according to what I think and what I'm taught, is evolution, growth, understanding, expansion. And what I know is that without having gone through what we went through together, my daughter and I would never have that conversation. That's the gift. That's the giving and the receiving. The word within forgive. You see, some people, I think of metaphysics as if I can do the right thing, then this vending machine called God will give me stuff. It'll give me a car, it'll give me a house, it'll give me a relationship, it'll give me a boat, it will give me a bank account. But I believe that the proper use of our philosophy is give me a greater understanding. Give me a greater understanding. Give me a capacity to love. Give me a capacity to be in this world. Give me a capacity to make a difference. Give me the capacity to make a difference. So now we go to chapter 2. We're sitting on the bench. My daughter and I and the gorilla. The gorilla is fully involved now. And she was saying because she and her husband made a choice to move to Houston, which is a long ways away from family. She's out there. She's, 2 time zones away and from everybody. I mean, even though the rest of us are spread apart, we're all on the West Coast, and she's in Texas. And we're talking, and she said, she says, I feel really guilty because I'm raising the kids up so far away from family. But she said, this opportunity we had in Texas is so good for us. It gave us a chance to buy a house. It gave us some work stability. It gave us a chance to create the world we wanted for the kids. And I said, maybe because your children are being raised so far away from the rest of family, that someday they will have an understanding that you and I can't even imagine. The gift that keeps giving. And so what I say to her is, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, because there is something higher here going on. When we look at religious traditions, the Native Americans take this on directly in their mythology. And in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm giving this to you in very general terms, there is an animal that is very much revered by the Pacific Northwest Native Americans, a lot of Native Americans, but especially them, and that's the raven. And we all know the raven. The raven in some way, shape, or form is around us all the time. They are literally everywhere. They live in every time zone. They live in every geography. They live in every weather zone. They are an animal that has actually done really well in this world. They come in different sizes. Some people call them crows, whatever. They're around us all the time. They're out there making a lot of noise. And the reason that raven is revered so much is because raven has this incredible intelligence. Now, if we move away from the mythology for just a minute, ravens are actually some people think the most intelligent bird on the planet. They can actually use 3 steps of a challenge to get what they want. In other words, they have puzzle-solving properties. In other words, they can use a string to get a stick, to open a box, to get the food. They can do that. It doesn't take them any time at all. They just look at a situation, they figure it out, they do it, they get the food, they go away. It's been proven by science that raven actually share information with their young, that they pass on information. They pass on information about predators and things like cars. Very rarely will you see a raven hit by a car. That's because they're teaching each other to stay away from the car. That's not true of skunks. I mean, skunks, a car's coming along, they turn around, they put their butts in the air. They haven't figured it out over the last 100 years or so. They didn't say, wow, Jerry was out there in the road last night and the scent didn't work for him, but they still try it. Now raven is an animal who gets it. They figured that's why they thrive so much. In terms of when human beings come into their territory, they actually do really well because they can coexist with people, because they figure people out. The Native American culture saw this in them a long time ago, and they assigned to them the spiritual and mythological properties that are like this. They see raven as almost a godly character in its level of intelligence, craftiness, cleverness, and creativity. But what I love about the Native Americans is they see the other side of it. They say, but raven also exemplifies trickery, deceit, manipulation, recklessness, troublemaking, arrogance, and a lack of common sense. Is that us or what? Is that freedom, Okay, but this is the point. And this is why the Native Americans revere ravens so much, is because resulting in a need to find their way out of trouble through imagination. A need to find their way out of trouble through imagination. That's the gift. Imagination is what causes us to evolve and to grow and to move forward. But in the meantime, we can do some pretty hurtful things. In the meantime, within our confusion, we can hurt those people that we love the most. And I know that what happened for my daughter and I on that bench that day was there was a special place I came that I've never been with her before. I've never been so close to her because we came together in our confusion of what it is to be a human being. We were able to have an honest conversation about what it is to get up every single morning and try and do the best we can with what we have, and to try and make the most out of it. I'd like to end this morning with a prayer that you find in the seat near you. It's on that sort of pink piece of paper. This is a Buddhist prayer. And what I love about this is because this prayer goes right to that place that I think that we are calling for to be healed, which is our place of confusion. And it's out of our confusion that we are able to craft and create these absolutely beautiful existences that we have. So if you look at this carefully, this prayer has been cut into 4 pieces. 2 pieces on the front, 2 pieces on the back. So I'm going to read the first on each page, and then you're going to read together the bottom of each page. Okay. If I have harmed anyone in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through my own confusions, I ask their forgiveness. And if there is a situation I am not yet ready to forgive, I forgive myself for that.
For all the ways that I harm myself, negate, doubt, belittle myself, judge or be unkind to myself, through my own confusions, I forgive myself.
And so it is.